Tonight, coronavirus cases on the rise.
We have to sober up to this reality. We're still in the first wave. We're not in a second wave.
Why young adults are now seeing a new high rate of infection and what can be done to keep them safe. Plus, a look at the picture of the state of the U.S. economy after the latest new unemployment applications. And
exactly 1 month ago, George Floyd spoke his final words, "I can't breathe," and changed the course of history.
The House takes a vote on their police reform bill, the latest from Capitol Hill. All this and more tonight on Faith Nation.
A rise in coronavirus cases breaking records in several states. Welcome to Faith Nation. I'm Jenna Browder.
And I'm John Jessup. For every one person diagnosed with COVID-19, there is another 10 undiagnosed people who are also infected with the virus. The Centers for Disease Control and Prevention announcing today the number of true U.S. infections may be as high as 20 million.
That new CDC report coming as many states see a spike in cases. Texas hit especially hard. So much so that Governor Greg Abbott announced today he is putting a hold on the next phase of reopening.
That's right. In an executive order, Abbott said, quote, "The last thing we want to do as a state is go backwards and close down businesses. This temporary pause will help our state corral the spread until we can safely enter the next phase of opening our state for businesses."
Meanwhile, northeastern states are joining together to issue a mandatory quarantine for anyone traveling from the hard-hit areas and regions. Texas, Arizona, North and South Carolina, and a handful of other states.
That's right. Governors in New York, New Jersey, and Connecticut are now requiring travelers from those hotspot states to go into isolation for 14 days.
We know that we're not an island, and our region is not an island, and that's why we're doing what we can to protect ourselves from incoming viruses from highly infected areas.
And joining us now is CBN News medical reporter Lori Johnson. Lori, always great to have you on the show. Now, despite the increases in cases, the death rate is dramatically down. Do health experts expect the death rate to increase on the heels of all these new cases?
Well, you know, John, it is a possibility. Dr. Anthony Fauci was testifying in a congressional hearing yesterday, and he's expressed some concern about that because here's what we know. Usually when we see a spike in positive cases, 2 weeks later, we often see an increase in hospitalizations. 4 weeks later is when we see a jump in deaths. The only difference, though, John, and this is really important, is that the number of new cases are predominantly young people. It's very surprising. We're talking about people in their 20s, 30s, under age 45. The median age, for example, in some of these hotspots, for example, in Florida, is 37 years old. And we know that most people who die from COVID-19 are older, particularly over age 80. So it'll be very interesting to see what happens to these people who are driving these positive cases up. They're predominantly young people. We worry, of course, and this has been the worry since day one, that young people who tend to be asymptomatic and do just fine don't even have to be hospitalized in general. We worry about them passing it along to their older relatives and to other people with whom they interact. And that's where masks come in. And there's this strange controversy about masks. It's gotten political. We're 18 weeks away from a presidential election, so everything is political these days. And for some reason, masks have become political. But the research is clear and overwhelming. Masks prevent transmission by 50%. So the overwhelming message is if you go out and you can't social distance, wear a mask.
Whenever I'm not in the studio, I am trying to wear a mask. You had mentioned hotspots. There's some good news in the fact that some previous hotspots, like in New York, New Jersey, and Connecticut, they're reporting much lower rates of infection and actually discouraging travel into those places from current hotspots. Can you explain what's happening there?
Around is fair play. It's the absolute opposite of what was happening before. For example, Governor Cuomo said people who are coming to New York from hotspots like Florida Texas, Arizona, North and South Carolina need to self-quarantine for 2 weeks. This is exactly what we saw many weeks ago in Florida, where Governor DeSantis said people coming to Florida from New York need to self-quarantine for a couple of weeks. You know, New York, New Jersey, Connecticut, they've done a great job bringing down their number of cases, number of deaths, and they want to keep it that way.
Understandable. Now, a new model predicts the number of deaths in the United States will reach 180,000 by October 1st. But there's a catch. What is that catch, Lori?
And this is a brand new model by one of these very reputable agencies, the University of Washington, and we've been relying on their models since the very beginning. And they said, yes, 188,000 deaths by October 1st. But they said if people wear masks in public, then that number will be reduced by 33,000. So if people are good about wearing masks, they're talking about 147,000 deaths by October 1st. Right now, we're at about 122,000 deaths. So we're talking about 25,000 more deaths between now and October 1st is what the prediction is. Although, John, as we've seen, these models can sometimes be way off. And oftentimes, the actual what ends up happening is better than what they predicted. It all depends on our behavior.
Well, that is indeed the hope, better than predicted. Lori Johnson, CBN medical reporter, thank you so much for your time.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Well, tonight the U.S. is facing its highest levels of unemployment since the Great Depression. Another near 1.5 million Americans applied for jobless benefits last week alone.
CBN White House correspondent Ben Kennedy joins us now with a breakdown of the latest numbers and a look at what may be in store for the rest of the year. Ben?
Well, John and Jenna, this is the 14th consecutive week where states have processed millions of first-time unemployment applications. This as the U.S. economy begins to show some new signs of improvement.
Grim news from the Department of Labor. The U.S. economy shrank at a 5% rate in the first quarter, the sharpest decline in more than a decade.
A decline of 5%. Really tells us the impact that the lockdowns are having really just in the latter half of March, because we know the economy was swimming along quite well before the pandemic.
The pandemic put 20 million people out of work. Hamrick says how fast we recover could depend on consumers.
Looking ahead to the future, we still think that there's a significant risk that employers are going to have to part with some of their workers because consumers are not, let's say, shopping at the levels that they would have been before.
The National Bureau of Economic Research says the economy took a turn for the worse back in February, ending an expansion that had lasted for 128 months. Some economists believe the worst could be behind us. Financial markets remained robust, with hopes the economy could rebound in the second half of the year. The Congressional Budget Office is predicting a 21.5% growth rate July through September, followed by a 10.4% gain in the fourth quarter.
The economy does appear to be on a slow recovery path, but that recovery is highly dependent on the way that this slippery virus behaves. As we can see here, really in the last 24 hours or so, the numbers are not necessarily working in our favor with respect to the outbreak itself, and from that flows the economic activity.
Now, President Trump said he is not opposed to another COVID-19 relief package, as lawmakers are debating what would it be in it before it does make it to Trump's desk. This as the initial unemployment benefits are set to run out in less than a month, and Congress is debating whether to extend those. We'll, of course, keep you posted on what they decide. John, Jenna?
All right, thank you, Ben. And here with us now is CBN Chief Political Analyst David Brody. David, we are seeing the economic downturn, some forecasts even showing quarter two could be even worse. What does this mean for President Trump's reelection bid?
Well, Jenna, you mentioned a downturn, and in Ben's story, he did talk about a downturn. He also talked, I should say, the experts he had on also talked about a potential upturn in the third quarter and the fourth quarter. So the point is we're all over the map on this. And if anybody knows how this is exactly going to play out, we don't. And as for Donald Trump, look, the one part of the polling that we've seen with Trump that people trust him on is the economy. So he needs to get that economy in order, but he's fighting, as he calls it, the plague. And he's fighting this coronavirus. We're all fighting it, but he's fighting it politically. And so we'll see. I think the bottom line is it's gonna hurt him in the short term. The question is, let's check back after Labor Day and see how it's going.
David, I want to get your take on the latest poll out by the New York Times. The polling coming out today, it shows Joe Biden gaining ground in swing states and with a strong lead in 6 battleground states. How seriously should we, and more importantly, the campaigns, take this latest batch of polling?
Well, look, it's bad news for Donald Trump. I mean, there's, the Trump campaign and the Trump White House can't spin this any other way. I mean, it's been poll after poll, whether it be Biden up 7, up 10, up 14, 6-4, doesn't matter. He's been up in pretty much all the polls. Now, the other problem for the Trump campaign here, John and Jenna, is that Hillary Clinton was the boogeyman, right? I mean, Donald Trump was able to do a number on Hillary Clinton. Not as easy with Joe Biden. I mean, his approval numbers, or I should say his disapproval numbers, are not as high as Hillary Clinton, and that's a problem. The only good news for Donald Trump in these polls that we've seen, number one, as I just mentioned, they trust him more than Biden on the economy. So if the economy rebounds, it's a good thing. And the second thing is that in many of these polls, those undecideds, typically the ones that, in other words, haven't decided quite yet who they're going to vote for, believe it or not, there are actually people out there that are like that, but they lean Republican. That's good news for Donald Trump, who's going to need every single one of them and more.
David, what can the president actually do to win over some of these battleground states? And also, what states are you keeping especially close eye on?
Well, there's so many different states because, remember, this electoral puzzle can go all different ways, like a jigsaw puzzle. But the number one, I should say the number 2 states I really want to say 3. See, you got me going here. Now I could go into like 9 or 10. Let me give you 3. North Carolina, Florida, and Arizona. Arizona is changing rapidly in terms of the demographic. North Carolina was just a bare win by Donald Trump last time. Same thing to a degree with Florida. So those are the 3 I'm definitely looking at. As for what Donald Trump can do, hey, Jenna, hey, John, let's get real. We know what he can do. Tone it down on Twitter. And yeah, good luck. He's not going to do that. So other than that, he's got to hope that his base shows up. And not only that his base shows up, but they bring a friend, because his base is not going to get it done. They're going to need to do a lot more than that.
All right, and we're going to have to leave it there on that note. David Brody, thank you, as always, for your time.
Thanks, guys.
Coming up, police reform failed in the Senate, but can the House get something done? You're watching CBN's Faith Nation.
Introducing the CBN Bible from CBN.com. Now, an easier way to study the Bible and grow in your faith. Highlight your favorite verse. Read separate versions at a glance. Click and read a commentary. Or cross-reference your favorite verse using the Strong's Concordance. All the right tools to study the Bible, all in one place. The CBN Bible, available at cbn.com/Bible or the iTunes App Store.
This is CBN Newswatch.
Thanks for joining us.
Watch breaking news, exclusive stories and programs, credible news reporting.
We show you what's happening in the world and how you can pray about it.
This is CBN Newswatch, because truth matters. Weekdays at 5 on the CBN News Channel.
Yes, right on time.
From Superbook.
Pepper's Pizza Palace is donating pizza for everyone today. Wait. I have big plans today.
Trust in God even when times are tough. He has a plan for your life.
Hey, we're going to be late for the grand opening. My parents want me to help with this outreach thing, feeding the community. What am I supposed to do here? Superbook!
Join the Superbook Club and get Superbook The Birth of Moses, plus 2 copies to share with others, all for your gift of only $25.
Pharaoh ordered all newborn Hebrew boys thrown into the Nile River, and I have a 3-month-old brother.
The Birth of Moses. Yours for a gift of only $25.
What will you do the next time the soldiers come? I do not know, but I trust God has a plan for all of us.
Superbook Superbook Club members, free streaming for seasons 1, 2, and 3 is now available.
Welcome back. A Supreme Court win tonight for the Trump administration. The justices have sided with the Department of Homeland Security on an important immigration case. The High Court ruling now allows the administration to quickly deport some asylum seekers instead of letting them make their case to a federal judge. A majority of justices agreed on the issue, ruling 7-2 in favor of DHS. The ACLU quickly protested the decision, saying it will make it more difficult to question the actions of immigration officials at the border. On CBN News Watch today, the executive director of the National Immigration Forum had this to say about the decision.
Well, practically speaking, the Trump administration has really closed off our nation's asylum system. And this is a tragedy for those who, for example, are fleeing religious persecution around the world. For the Supreme Court to, in essence, remove any ability for someone to appeal their credible fear interview, I think is just really undermines our nation's values. And again, if there's anything that we stand for as a nation, it should be that we seek to protect those who are persecuted for their faith, their nationality, their political affiliation.
And the clock is ticking for the Supreme Court, now with only one official day left in the June ruling timeline. A few big cases dealing with religious freedom and one major case on abortion still have yet to come down. The court could add additional days to the calendar next week.
Well, it was 1 month ago today that George Floyd died in Minneapolis police custody. By now, we've all seen that disturbing video showing Floyd on the street, screaming for help and saying he couldn't breathe, all while a cop was kneeling on his neck, even after Floyd had lost consciousness. The video prompted a murder charge for former officer Derek Chauvin. It also sparked a new push for racial justice across the country and the world, really. A month later, protesters have not let up in their calls for racial justice, the removal of Confederate statues, and police reform. For more now, we're joined by Capitol Hill correspondent Abigail Robertson. Abigail, always great to see you. After the failed legislation in the Senate yesterday, the House today made some movement on police reform. Can you talk to us a little bit about that?
That's right. There's tremendous support within the Democratic Party for this House Democrat sweeping police reform bill that calls for a federal ban on chokeholds, requires body cameras, prohibits no-knock warrants in drug cases, and makes lynching a federal crime. And here's what House Speaker Nancy Pelosi had to say ahead of today's vote.
The George Floyd Justice and Policing Act will fundamentally transform the culture of policing to address systemic racism, curb police brutality, and bring accountability to our police departments. It will save lives.
Now, there is a fair amount of overlap between the House Democrat bill and the Senate Republican bill. Where they really differ is in this issue of qualified immunity for police officers, which Democrats are trying to get rid of and make it easier to prosecute cops. And then also in the Republican bill, they're calling for more training for police officers instead of what Democrats are calling for, which is more of an outright ban to some of the current practices.
Interesting. Abby, how do Republicans in the House feel about the push for police reform?
Well, they want to see it happen, but they're not excited about the bill that House Democrats are pushing. And today, House Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy was saying that this bill that House Democrats are voting on, Republicans were not able to provide any input for it in committee or on the floor. They weren't given the opportunity to offer amendments to it. And he really says he was arguing that in the Senate, Republicans gave Democrats the opportunity to offer up to 20 amendments if they would agree to proceed to debate on the bill, which, as we saw yesterday, didn't happen. But House Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy was pretty fired up today, arguing that Republicans are trying to make a law while Democrats are trying to play political games. Take a look.
Even as a U.S. Senator, Tim Scott was stopped. Questioned whether he was a senator. When he had his Senate pin on, they asked him who he took it from. And the Speaker of this House claims that Tim Scott is about a murderer when he's committed his life to making a difference. That's appalling to me. Or Durbin saying it's a token. That's appalling to me. Or the idea that Democrats on the Senate side would not even allow the bill to come up. Do they care about the issue? Or do they want to play politics?
Now, as I said, on the surface, there is quite a bit of overlap between the House and the House bill and the Senate bill. The question is, in an election year, will they get together to work on a bipartisan solution?
All right, we shall see. Abigail Robertson, Capitol Hill correspondent, thank you very much.
Israel's push to annex parts of the West Bank and the consequences it could have for the entire Middle East. That story when we come back.
When I came to Regent University, it's like the world opened up. I felt like I needed to advance my career and go back to school. Regent was a perfect fit for me. The Regent professors are world class. You are equipped. The focus of the faculty is on each individual student, whether it's online or in person. You become a part of Regent's family. You carry with you not just the content and the knowledge, but the confidence to understand that we can be significant in the world.
Regent University. Follow your path.
Nigerian Christians
in Iran are routinely arrested.
Happily, Christians continue to suffer.
In times of trial and affliction, you need to know the truth.
One of the fastest growing Christian populations in the world.
Join Wendy Griffith and George Thomas for Christian World News.
Young people are the ones who are open to the gospel.
Powerful stories of suffering and hope that affect all Christians. Watch Christian World News, Saturday at 5 p.m. Get Protect Your Sleep and discover how to improve the quality of your life. A free DVD or booklet from the Christian Broadcasting Network.
If you're not a great sleeper, you can do things to make yourself a great sleeper. If you're already a pretty good sleeper, you can enhance your sleep and be even better.
5 leading experts help remove the obstacles between you and restorative sleep.
When you don't get a restful night's sleep, you wake up with an accumulation of stress.
Call 1-800-700-7000 or go to CBN.com to get your free DVD or booklet today.
Everything you do better with a good night's sleep.
You'll discover how food affects your sleep, how to put insomnia to rest, explore effective remedies for sleep apnea, and much more in Protect Your Sleep. Wake up to your best life and get Protect Your Sleep today. Call 1-800-700-7000 or go to CBN.com to get your free DVD or booklet.
Well, welcome back. Lawmakers in Washington are deeply divided over Israel's possible annexation of parts of the West Bank. While many Republicans have voiced support for the Prime Minister's plan, most Democrats, on the other hand, aren't offering their support. In a letter out today, 189 House Democratic lawmakers are urging Israeli lawmakers to reconsider, saying, quote, unilateral annexation risks insecurity in Jordan. Unilateral annexation could create serious problems for Israel with its European friends and other partners around the world. The White House has also been paying close attention to the possible West Bank annexation, holding a meeting on the issue this week.
The plan, if implemented, could have profound consequences for the entire region. Chris Mitchell reports from Jerusalem.
From the Middle East to Europe and across the Atlantic, world leaders are debating whether Israel can annex nearly 1/3 of the West Bank or Judea and Samaria. But David Parsons sees the term annexation as misleading, since Israel is not seizing land.
Because they are essentially just asserting their title to something that they already have a right and claim to. The international community recognized it 100 years ago at the San Remo Conference. The League of Nations mandate in 1922 that the Jewish people have a claim to this entire land.
President Trump's so-called deal of the century triggered the possible claim to the land.
What's interesting is that President Trump has said if the Palestinians won't come to the table right away, Israel can start the process of incorporating this 30%, up to 30%, into the modern sovereign state of Israel.
After meeting with advisors to both Netanyahu and alternate Prime Minister Benny Gantz, Joel Rosenberg says they don't see eye to eye on the timing.
When I sit with close advisors to Prime Minister Netanyahu, they make a very interesting case. They say, okay, Joel, why is this summer different from all other summers? We didn't pick this summer. The President of the United States is the first president in history to lay out a peace plan that allows us to have more territory in biblical lands than we ever have been offered by, I mean, nobody has ever offered us that. When you talk to the close advisors to Defense Minister, alternate Prime Minister Benny Gantz, they say, well, we support that, the idea, and we support the president's peace plan. However, is this the right moment?
The division between Benny Gantz and Netanyahu has led some Israeli political pundits to speculate whether annexation will collapse the government and lead to new elections. But for now, the focus is on the White House and whether Israeli sovereignty will be declared over at least part of Israel's biblical heartland. Chris Mitchell, CBN News, Jerusalem.
All right, thank you, Chris. A big birthday celebration for the dogs. We'll explain when Faith Nation returns.
Christians around the world are standing with the Israelis. But why? In CBN's free magazine, Friends of Israel, you'll discover why Christians are supporting the Jewish state, how Israel is fulfilling prophecy as a light to the nations, and ways you can pray for the people of Israel. Israel needs the support of friends like you. Call now or go to cbn.com to get your free copy of Friends of Israel.
Heavenly Father, we do thank you for the work of your Spirit, Lord God, with this movement of getting the Bible,
yes,
Lord, into public schools.
Watch The Prayer Link, Tuesday nights at 6:30.
Hey, if you're tired and exhausted all day, you can't think clearly, and you really just need a cup or even a pot of coffee to get through your day, then join me, Dr. Josh Axe, for this new series where I'm going to teach you how to transform your diet and use essential oils and supplements to get a better night's sleep.
Protect your sleep and live your best life with innovative information from 5 leading sleep experts.
If you're not a great sleeper, you can do things to make yourself a great sleeper. If you're already a pretty good sleeper, you can enhance your sleep and be even better.
Discover a sleep-enhancing bedtime routine, how to put insomnia to rest, learn how to relieve pain that disturbs sleep, and much more in Protect Your Sleep.
Everything you do better with a good night's sleep.
Wake up to your best life. Call 1-800-700-7000 to get your free DVD or booklet of Protect Your Sleep today.
Don't miss out on this brand new series.
Well, welcome back. Jenna, hitting 20, was that a big deal for you?
Yeah, pretty big deal. Yeah, 21 especially.
21 especially. Well, not a big deal for some people, but for dogs, that's a different story.
Yeah, for 20-year-old Augie and her family, it's a record-breaking milestone. Augie is now the world's oldest golden retriever. The newly minted 20-year-old marked the big birthday with a celebration with some other retriever friends and her owners in Tennessee. A dog-friendly carrot cake was served to mark the special occasion. At 20 or 140 dog years, Augie has outlived the normal life expectancy for a golden retriever by 8 years.
That's right, Jenna. Most live between 10 and 12 years, but at 20 years old, Augie's owner says she's still surprisingly healthy, and I'm sure you're a big fan of carrot cake.
I am a big fan of carrot cake, and I have to say, Augie looks great. She wears 20 very well.
She's going to have to give us lessons.
She's a pretty one.
All right, well, thanks for watching Faith Nation.
Have a great evening.